We are a network, and many of the network members are participating in today's event remotely. But I did a study as part of my dissertation, as part of my degree, and the dissertation was focused on ex-prisoner entrepreneurs, so people like myself with lived experience, working within the criminal justice system, and it sought to identify the unique complexities that people like us face in developing and delivering our services. There isn't much research out there. A lot of the research on lived experience is around service user involvement at the lower sort of levels. So it was really seeking to fill the gaps in research. You know, luckily for us, we managed to secure £16,000 worth of funding, £15,000 from Unlimited and £1,000 from my university. So we conducted the research and we're going to go through some of the results with you now. So first question was, do you have lived experience of the criminal justice system? And we had 51 responses of people that do have that relevant experience. So we asked those people, what is it that you currently offer? And I know the writing's quite small, so I'll read it out for you. The services that these entrepreneurs offer range from education, training and employment interventions and support. Mentoring, we had 25 people that are offering mentoring support. Information, advice and guidance was another popular answer with 25. A lot of you do motivational work and service user involvement, which is really important. Course delivery, substance misuse support and resettlement support. So a real variety of services offered by people like us. When we asked you what challenges, if any, have you faced or that you're facing at the moment, the answers, again, they were quite broad, but by far the biggest answer was funding. Funding is the biggest barrier to people running successful projects and interventions, followed closely by security clearance issues, which I think funding's quite typical, isn't it, of the sector. We're all struggling for funding at various times. But in terms of specific complexities to our community of leaders with lived experience, I think the security clearance issue is a really pertinent issue, and one that the network will hopefully work closely with HMPPS and partners like that, statutory agencies, to reduce. Hopefully we can come together and make that a bit more of a seamless process. So yeah, security clearance issues were a big problem. Time poverty, bid writing or grant knowledge, which feeds into the funding issue. Collaborations was another big problem that again the network will solve. And then we've got staff support issues, credibility, scaling the model, referrals and so on and so forth. So when we mentioned the New Leaf network is there to support people, and what types of support did people feel would be most useful, the answers were really sort of clear. The first most popular answer was networking opportunities. So people like us really wanted the opportunity to mix with decision makers and funders and scale their business and become more credible in doing so. They wanted employment opportunities for service users. 20 people running services said that was really important to them. 17 people said they needed to raise their business profile, which again goes hand in hand with the networking opportunities. People needed bid writing support. They wanted accredited qualifications. And then I think probably most pertinent to our network is they wanted business mentoring. They wanted consortium partnership opportunities. They wanted awards and recognition of best practice, which is why we're here today. They wanted information and guidance on becoming sustainable, online referral systems, and an online support forum, which we're hoping the network will achieve in 2021. So that was the kind of hard, heavy data. That was just the Survey Monkey responses that we had. But then we also conducted some interviews with participants and people that are running hugely successful organisations in the criminal justice system, and they said things like, the loneliness of being entrepreneurs and the difficulties that they face. They'd overcome feelings of despair, usually through meeting peers that they could relate to, and that was mirrored by the survey responses. Actually, that kind of tackling the loneliness of being at the top by having mentoring and support from peers that know what you've been through and what you want to achieve. Steve said, I suppose meeting other social entrepreneurs, it's just kind of been a revelation that they've suffered the same thing, and it's like, thank God it's not just me, because it's been a lonely journey really, where I've only had limited information from people, even setting up policies, procedures, processes, so that peer support would be, like really useful. Peer support and mentoring was viewed as important by the survey respondents and the interviewees in their reflections about their journeys into leadership. So James, everyone's been anonymised, but James said, "I'll never forget the way that I felt touched that day just by a simple thing, that if I've got an army of people who can touch people like that, then the world will change in a good way, in the nicest way you could ever change." And Steve said, "I'd like to be able to reach out and help people who are passionate and entrepreneurial, people who want to make a difference in their community but haven't got the resources about them. And I just think that I can help him and set him up and talk to him and mentor at her." James discussed the reasons why he does the work that he does, and I think this resonates for a lot of the network members. There was that immediate question, do you want to make some money and just leave to never come back again and turn your back on all the stuff that made you unhappy in the first place? But the driving force was I wanted to help other people, because I knew that there were lots of people like me who didn't belong there but just didn't know how to get out. And I felt like I had a sense of responsibility to go out and find people like me. And I think that's just a beautiful way of explaining why we do the work that we do, that it's a bit of a calling. During interviews, people explained why they'd set up the services that they've set up, which included a lack of credibility of existing services. So Steve's sentence 16 years ago, his last sentence, and his company turns over millions of pounds each year. He almost exclusively employs people with lived experience who offer substance misuse support. And Steve said, "Well, I'd been in and out of the criminal justice system and in and out of addiction since I was 13, and I never really got into any kind of treatment services. I'd just kind of get locked up and come out and do the same thing again. And I didn't know of any service that attracted me or would work for me. So I just created a service for me, basically, when it weren't there." James specialises in educational courses, course delivery, and his organisation, again, turns over millions per annum. He spoke about assimilation into a system that he blamed for years of extended criminality and drug use, having had 103 previous convictions and served 15 sentences. His last one ended 15 years ago. James said, "I see that system as the reason I was in there for 20 years. So you can't change something by being the same as it. To compromise your values and change just to work in the system, you'll end up looking more like the system than you will yourself. And I don't want to be that. By using that valued subject knowledge expertise, we can change the system. Nothing will ever be perfect, but we can always make it better." And how do we make it better? Well, we spoke about collaboration being one of the top issues that the network members wanted to achieve. Some of the interview participants voiced concern over how they were utilised by prime providers and commissioners, which was also mirrored in the survey data. So taken advantage of by big organisations expecting something for nothing and using us as bid candy without actually using us in the end. And John said, "I don't think the criminal justice sector utilises the voluntary and community sector correctly. I think contracts tend to go out to massive providers and the voluntary sector is just kind of taken for granted." And then James said, "I feel like we're being used for outputs and not outcomes. I think sometimes we're too ambitious, not for the ex-prisoner or the service user, the hurt human being, but often for the services themselves." So some really powerful qualitative data and some really great responses from a wide variety of entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs with lived experience. So just to recap on the background, the current issues that we're obviously facing at the moment, which add on to the study, are COVID-19, the dreaded C word, which mean that prisoners are resettling into the community, into a community that they are not aware of, they don't know how to navigate, and also there's a reduction in much needed services and face-to-face delivery at the moment. So that's the biggest issue I think that we're aware of, is that we need to tackle and keep providing services to resettling citizens, returning citizens. There's a lack of joined up working and referral routes in the community between services. There's a lot of great practice going on, but it's very fragmented. there's some really good networks emerging. You've got like Paula Harriot's Prisoner Policy Network. You've got the Criminal Justice Alliance. There's a lot of great stuff going on, but I think there's the feedback that we've had is that it's really important to feed into policy in order to change things for the community, but they're slightly lacking in practical, hands-on, person-centred support for the individuals that are taking part in the network, and that's what the New Leaf Network hopes to support. It hopes to fill the gaps in that, basically. Other issues in service user involvement and lived experience leadership is tokenism, ego. So obviously people like us being wheeled out to kind of talk the talk and talk about our lived experience and kind of put our trauma out in public for everybody to see, to keep them interested, and then we're wheeled back in again, you know, to kind of keep doing what we're doing behind closed doors. But then on the other side of that, I think the lived experience movement suffers from a lot of ego. There's a lot of people like myself that have been to prison and have had that kind of darker history, and we've got a point to prove, and with that comes a little bit of egoism. So yeah, it's just kind of the delicate tension between those issues. There's a lack of business networks for lived experience. There's this assumption, you know, that lived experience resides at the lower service user involvement end of the ladder, when actually, as you've just seen, there's people that are running multi-million-pound turnover organisations, very successful organisations. What about those guys? They're still lonely, and we still need to join them up together. And then finally, people and organisations capitalising on our knowledge and experience. So what are the immediate solutions that we came up with based on the consultation feedback that we received? We decided to create a members-only network, leaders with lived experience, joining together, supporting each other, creating things like this, the conference and the awards event. We need to get funding to develop formally, so all of the work that we've done so far has been unfunded or has been funded through sponsorship. Like today's event has been sponsored by P3, Timpsons and the Forward Trust. But obviously moving forward, we need to look at becoming sustainable, so getting some funding to do that would be great. We're really keen to create an online platform for communications and support, and that will have a two-tiered approach. So we obviously want to support the leaders with lived experience and create a network that's around business and networking and, you know, business support, but also we don't want to forget about our comrades that are coming out of prison and that need that support from relatable role models that mirror rehabilitation in action. So we're hoping that the online platform or portal will be almost like a social networking site where we can do all of those things. And then finally, the conference and awards ceremony to raise visibility and hopefully get you all talking, attract some more allies and attract some more members. And that's where we are today. Longer term solutions that we're looking for include a national body of people with convictions, awards, newsletters, website, all the infrastructure. We're really keen to develop a consortium approach to contracts and funding, and we'll talk more about that later. The New Leaf Cooperative CIC could be the SPV for that consortium approach. We're talking about being member owned, so people with lived experience actually owning the company and benefiting from it both financially and reputationally. We're talking about a circle of accountability, profitability and support. And we're also going to develop a kite mark for criminal justice system organisations who utilise lived experience. So I'm going to finish off my introductory section now. Introductory section now, just by I think recapping on the positive things that are going on in the sector right now. So it feels for me, and I don't know about you guys, that it's the right time, the right place and the right people sitting around the table talking about the value of lived experience and what innovation we can bring to support the sector. You know, you've got funders, and we're going to hear from a funder, Mike Trace, shortly, but we've got funders funding lived experience projects. The National Lottery Community Fund, for example, the leading funder, giving out £60,000 to specific lived experience projects is amazing. Unlimited have funded us previously, and the Forward Enterprise Fund as well. We've got commissioners like the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner requesting Lex representatives on decision-making panels and interview panels and things like that. Tender design, you know, we're being brought to the table, we're being asked the questions now, which is great. You've got statutory agencies such as probation. I was at a meeting last week where they released a workforce strategy. You know, their big focus for the next 12 months is around recruitment and retention, but also diversity and inclusion. Part of that diversity and inclusion is around employing people with lived experience directly from prison, and if they've been out in the community for a while, just really utilising that knowledge. You've got senior roles for Lex civil service, designing services and feeding into policy. I mean, we supported a guy out of a prison last week, and already he's applying for £30,000 jobs, you know, working for the MOJ and HMPPS. It's really, these aren't tokenistic roles, they are meaty, credible career paths, which is really exciting, and we want more of that. So I suppose my question to you at the start of this conference is, do we still feel that there's a long way to go?